Hello, class. Today we're going to be looking at chapter 16, speaking to persuade. So we've done informative speech. Now we're moving on into persuasive speeches. Okay. So we do have a big agenda for this lecture. First, we're going to be looking at why it's important for you to know how to speak to persuade. Also, we're going to look at ethics in persuasion. We're going to look at the challenges that do take place whenever you're trying to speak persuasively. We're going to look at the degrees of persuasion. We're going to look at persuasive speeches on question of fact, persuasive speeches on question of value, persuasive speeches on question of policy. And then lastly, we're going to look at organizing persuasive speeches. Okay, so it is a lot that we're covering, but it's rich content. So just hang with me. I'll try to make it as interesting as possible, I promise. Okay, so first, let's look at the importance of persuasion, right? What is persuasion, Ms. Brown? Well, it's simply the process of creating, reinforcing, or changing people's beliefs or their actions, okay? So persuasion is a lot. Have you ever seen those rubber band balls, right? It's a lot of stuff rolled up in one, okay? So it's literally like one of those rubber band balls. So persuasive skills do benefit all aspects of your life, though your personal life, your community, and it can also impact your career, right? There might be something that you want to persuade your future significant other to do. Well, hopefully this lecture will help you. Or, maybe you want to persuade your boss to give you a raise. Maybe you want to, there's so many different examples, right, of where persuasive speaking really does come into play. So, super important topic. And hopefully, you will really learn some things from this lecture. So, fun fact, 30% of the US economy is linked to jobs that depend on persuasion. Some of these could be sales, law, public relations, and so on and so forth. So, maybe you want to be a lawyer. Well, you've got to be able to persuade the jury, right? If you've ever watched Lincoln Lawyer, such a great show. Anyways, he does a great job at this. Sales, right? You've got to get people to buy your product, things like that. Okay, so also you need informed citizens and consumers, right? We're all consumers. We need persuasion knowledge to evaluate the flow of persuasion messages from politicians, advertisers, so many different things. We talk about this in my mass media class, but advertising is plentiful. So we need to know, just as informed citizens and consumers, how to differentiate from this. From these messages and be critical consumers of information, right? What should we believe and what should we maybe not believe? What should we be a little bit more skeptical of, right? Let's have a hint of skepticism. So that's another reason why persuasive speaking is so important, okay? Not just as a speaker, but also as a receiver, okay? So, four things real quick that persuasive speaking requires, okay? Persuasive speaking requires clear communication. Number one, clear communication. Two, ability to influence attitudes. Three, ability to influence beliefs. And lastly, number four, the ability to influence and inspire action, okay? So that's four things that persuasive speaking does require. Okay, so now that we've talked about persuasive speaking and why it's important, let's kind of look at the ethics of persuasion. Okay, like let's look and see why our ethical goals should be sound whenever we're going to do persuasive speaking. So you need to make sure that they're morally sound and can withstand challenges, right? You don't want to have misleading tactics, you don't want distorting facts, things like that. You want to really have good information. So those sources are going to be vital, especially in the persuasive speech. Okay, this is why I have you do more sources. Okay, because trust builds credibility. The more that your audience trusts you, the more likely you are to persuade them. Okay, so the more sources, sometimes the better. Okay, and usually a variety of sources is the best. All right. And then just know that unethical shortcuts fail, right? As Martin Luther King said, good outcomes cannot come from unethical methods. What a powerful quote. What a powerful quote. Good outcomes cannot come from an unethical methods. And then understanding all sides of an issue to present informed, balanced arguments. So I do want you guys to have the opposing view in your persuasive speech. I want you to have the opposing viewpoint. Everyone in every single speech, right? If you're going to do something, it's always good to answer the opposing views questions, right? Just because your favorite color is green and you're trying to convince them that like their favorite color should be blue, that's okay. Talk about why it's important. Like, talk about the opposing view. Terrible example. I'm sorry. But, anyways, you get the idea. Have an opposing viewpoint, right? Make sure that you address it. It's going to make you more persuasive. Okay, so real quick, let's look at the psychology of persuasion. So persuasion is a psychological process that happens with when different viewpoints exist, okay? So again, remember, it's like persuasive speaking is like a rubber band ball, just a lot of stuff rolled up in one, okay? So a lot of stuff has to happen. But persuasion requires disagreement, okay? It's a good thing. Without differing opinions, there's no need to persuade. So viewpoints can vary, they may be completely opposite or differ slightly. Your goal as a persuasive speaker is to advocate for your position despite other people's perspectives. Okay. And again, I will be approving topics and so on and so forth, but that's just a little bit of the psychology behind persuasive speaking. So real quick, I'm not gonna harp on this slide very long, but it is the most challenging speech that we're going to have, persuasive speaking, because one approach doesn't fit all, right? It's important for you guys to know that the audience is going to resist some of the things that you have to say, and some aren't, right? Some are going to be like, yeah, this is awesome, because they might have the same beliefs. So that is why it can be so challenging, right? So it's important to know that one approach won't fit all. What convinces some may alienate others, right? So what might convince Miss Brown might alienate someone else, right? I love emotional appeal, but some people don't. They want the facts. They're like, leave all that gushy stuff out. We want straight facts. While other people might not want straight numbers, they want emotional appeal and numbers or balance. So important for you to set realistic expectations and know that you're not probably going to change everyone's mind with your speech, right? And then know that success lies in adaptation. So analyze your audience first, right? And our audience is who? Our class, right? So you know your audience. So know your audience first and then adjust your presentation accordingly. Okay, so this is super important because a lot of people think, "Oh my gosh, I have to make them believe what I'm saying." Well, not technically, right? So your goal, again, yes, it is to persuade the audience. However, persuasion involves any movement by a listener from left to right. So, say you are someone in the audience is strongly opposed, and then you say they're strongly opposed to like not drinking caffeine. They love caffeine. They're going to drink caffeine forever. Okay. Well, they're strongly opposed to that. And you persuade them to be moderately opposed. You're like, no, I'm still always going to drink caffeine, but like maybe one day. You did your job. You persuaded them. So you just need to move the needle a little bit from left to right. Okay. Or right to left. So it's really important for you to understand that, like, hey, it's not just making them completely agree with you, but it's slightly moving the needle. Okay. There's different degrees of persuasion. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. So, you have different types of persuasive speeches. Okay. So we've got persuasive speeches on question of fact, which is simply asking whether something is true or false. Okay. So some are absolute, clear facts, right? Like a historical event. That is a question of fact. Okay. Others can be uncertain, like a prediction, future economy, sports outcomes. Those are some examples. And then some facts remain unknown, right? So topics with incomplete or inconclusive information. Okay. So, an example that would be like aliens or something like that. So, the goal of persuasive speeches is to convince the audience your answer is the most reasonable. on whichever one you would choose. Okay, next we have question of value. Okay, a question of value is a question about the worth, the rightness, morality of an idea or an action. Okay, so I had someone even do a speech on solitary confinement, right? Like, is this morally right for us to do? In prisons and jails and stuff, is solitary confinement, can't talk today, solitary confinement morally justifiable? Okay, so question of value, right? So that's how they're kind of centering it. All right, and then factual versus value. So some things that could be different. Factual focuses on objective facts, so like laws of the solitary confinement, right? So maybe the presentation wanted to go more factual, or maybe you want to go more value type with this presentation. You could talk more about the moral evaluation based on beliefs and facts, right? So instead of just specifically facts. So there's different ways that you're going to be able to lay out your persuasive presentations. All right. And then lastly, we have presentation or question of policy for our persuasive presentation. Okay. So, question about whether a specific course of action should or should not be taken. Okay. So, one, you've got passive agreement, and two, you've got immediate action. So, passive agreement is just persuading the audience to agree with the policy without urging immediate action, right? Like, hey, we want you to agree with this, but you don't have to like sign a petition right today. Immediate action would be like, hey, we want you to sign this petition. Oh my gosh. Or we want to get your donation, right? Maybe there's been like a natural disaster, something like that. Okay, we're not really going to talk about that. I do want to talk about this. So, organizing persuasive speeches is very important. Okay, so I have an outline for you, and it has all of these on here. Okay, it even has general organization, which we usually do. So, we got problem solution order, problem cause solution, comparative advantages order, and then Monroe's motivated sequence. Okay. So these are 5 different ways that you can structure your speech. I'm going to let you look at that in the outline that I've provided for persuasive speeches. And then I've got it like broken down for you. So hopefully you'll be able to kind of see which one fits your speech the best, right? Each speech is going to be something different. Like it's going to be better to organize it a certain way for you, right? So maybe you want to do recycling. Well, maybe problem solution order is really persuasive. However, if you wanted to do um, recycling, maybe you do problem cause solution because that might make it more persuasive, right? So each different structure is potentially going to make your speech more persuasive. So important for you to kind of look through these and then figure out which one is going to be the best for me, specifically in your speech, to see how it's going to be the most persuasive, right? So maybe comparative advantages, like we had someone do Kobe versus Michael Jordan, right? So like maybe so comparative advantages was like the perfect way to do it, and then so on and so forth. Okay, so wrapping up, no, I'm taking a lot of your time today. So we did talk about the importance of persuasion. We looked at ethics, challenges of persuasive speaking, moving that needle from left to right in the degrees of persuasion. We talked about persuasive speeches on question of fact, questions of value, questions of policy, and then how to organize those persuasive speeches. You guys let me know if you have any questions.